I think we all know in our gut when we've made a decision that is comfortable and when we've made one that's not. And I think it's just kind of recognizing that, just using it to your own benefit and to like live your life in the way that you want to live it.
Welcome to Another Door podcast. Another Door is a place that you come to when you're rethinking your work, whether it's job loss, a career change, or you just want to rethink how you are doing your work right now. Come and find us at anotherdoor.co.uk. I have Kim Rowell on the podcast this episode. We are talking about her new book, which is all about you are not a job title. That is what caught my eye. It's another book about maybe redundancy, but also about career change and again, finding yourself. So obviously I shared a lot of thoughts and ideas with Kim, and it was great to hear her take on it and where she'd got the inspiration from to not just write her book, but what changes she brought into her career and life as a result of her rethinking. So although we kind of share very similar takes and the books are probably very similar, it's always good to find people who you can thrash ideas around and be like a sounding board. And this is kind of how our conversation went. So I hope you enjoy it. I hope you take inspiration from it. Would love to know the little sound bites or ideas you get from it. Please share. And if you have a moment, please leave a review and let us know what you think. Kim, welcome to Another Door podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's lovely to be here.
Before we get stuck in, maybe a quick introduction.
I'm Kim Rowell. At the moment, I'm working as managing editor of news production at ITN, which is a big news service that covers ITV, Channel 4 and Channel 5. And before that, I was at the BBC. Storytelling is my DNA, I think. It's the kind of the running thread through everything I've done, although it's been quite varied and a bit different. But I've been fortunate enough. I say fortunate, but I'm tired, so I must have worked quite hard. So, I worked at the BBC. Before that, I was at the Telegraph. Before that, I worked at Channel 4. So I've worked with some of the big hitters. But I suppose it's really important to say that I've been made redundant 3 times in my career, which is a lot, and I'm aware it's a lot. And even when I say it, I'm really cool with saying it. I'm just like, yeah, I've been made redundant 3 times. But the reaction is different every time I say it. And I find some people open up more when I say it and they'll be like, oh yeah, that happened to me too, but I don't really say it like that. I just say I went for another opportunity, or, they just reframed it in their mind so that it's more palatable. And I think we do that, don't we? We try and make it more so it's not awkward or more comfortable for other people, but not for us, which is really weird. Yeah. So that's me really.
I love that. It's like a confession. It's like we're confessing.
Yeah, it is.
I've been made redundant.
I think that's the whole point of maybe why I'm so calm about saying it. Because I want to normalize it, because it happens a lot, and it happens a lot more now for sure, because it's a lot harder to fire people. That was primarily the reason. And whenever a company is restructured, it's happened to so many people I know, and it's how you deal with it and how you process it and how you come out the other side, because it's not you that's redundant, it's the role. And I think it took me a long time to realise that, which is why I wrote the book, You Are So Much More Than Your Job, because some of the best things that have happened to me have happened outside of work, through opportunities that I've maybe worked really hard for, or people that I've met. And, there's other things to the 9 to 5 or the 10 to 6 or whatever.
Yeah. The shift work.
No,
absolutely.
Yes, exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I completely get that. That's what Another Door was about. It was like, when I got made redundant, that moment of course you're going to be worried and panicky and all of those emotions. But at the same time, there's that kind of glimmer of well, what if? What if this could be all right? What if this could be better? So yeah, good. Right. We're just going to get rambling, I can tell today. It's going to be one of those days now. It's just about to get cracking with the conversation.
Love a chat.
Yeah, exactly. Stop a coffee, just sit back and chat. What's your another door moment?
I suppose, like I said, I've had three examples primary examples of doors closing and other doors opening. They've all happened at different stages of my life. Like my first redundancy was when I was in my early 20s and I thought it was the end of the world. I literally couldn't physically get out of bed. And I remember my boyfriend, now husband, thankfully, at the time, sitting with me and thinking, oh, geez, what's wrong with you? And I wasn't ever diagnosed with depression or anything like that, but I'd lost my purpose. I literally lost the reason that I was getting up in the morning. And that was really blooming hard when I was in my early 20s to think, crikey, what is the point of me? What am I here? What am I supposed to be contributing to? But interestingly, the work that I'd done, because I was made redundant, I'm trying to think where I was made redundant from. I was made redundant from Fremantle, who make The X Factor and Britain's Got Talent, a big production company. And the work that I'd done there actually facilitated me being headhunted for a job at Channel 4, because I'd been exploring opportunities around interactivity and competitions and voting within programs. And Channel 4 then launched a business development project and they hired me to go with it because I basically started those conversations. So I think I should have maybe believed more in my own work ethic and, the actual talent that I had. And I don't think we all recognise our self-worth. And then the second time that it happened, I have to really think about which one it was. Okay, so maybe
blending
no,
together.
because so much has happened. So when I was then made redundant from Channel 4, because like I say, it was a business development opportunity which ran for 2 years. And then that was really challenging because I'd got married whilst I was at Channel 4, thinking about starting a family, made redundant. I'm thinking, oh, crap, this is another life moment where this is stopping me from doing, it was not a good time to have a baby when you're not employed. And I actually went and worked at Clinton Cards because it was over Christmas. I was running out of money. So I went and did that. And there's this moment now I always recollect where I got shut in a shopping centre because I was so rubbish at working at Clinton Cards. It took me so long to cash up. They actually closed the shopping centre. And I had to go and knock on the door at Primark and be like, can you let me out, please? This is the weirdness of it, the sliding doors, it's closing a door, opening another one. The shopping centre actually got knocked down and what have you, but then moved forward a couple of years. I was working then at the BBC, sitting outside the same shopping centre, which they redeveloped in Oxford, about to go and give a TED talk about storytelling, having worked in that shopping centre at Clinton Cards little more than 2 years previously. And you think that's the serendipity of it. You think you get in this funk, as in this is it, this is the worst, it can't get any more bad than it is now. And then literally everything is transitional, everything moves, the good, the bad, the ugly, it all just flows. So just try and embrace it. And I think that's the thing. And when I got made redundant from the Telegraph, it was the day after I'd won a national award. I was like, this is bonkers, it makes no sense. And then I used it as an opportunity to start a podcast for the people that I won the award from. So I suppose it's about thinking. Obviously it was devastating. All three examples, I had moments of pure what is the point of me? Yeah. But in my lucid moments of I need to do something here, the work that I did and the efforts that I made did pay off, and they did give me connections and move me in the right direction. And like I say, I wasn't redundant. Those roles were redundant.
I love that sentiment of shifting. That's really visual, life is shifting all the time. And so don't allow yourself just to become. And I guess that plays quite nicely into the title of your book and your whole message about you're not a title, you're not a thing. You could be many different things. It's about shifting through it and allowing those opportunities to come.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a big thing here around resilience, particularly when we're coming out of the pandemic. Clearly COVID is still around, but we're all kind of living with it now. It's one of those things where someone says, oh, be more resilient. It's like, okay, fine, click your finger. I'm more resilient. It's like, cheer up. You don't just cheer up. It doesn't work like that. Resilience is the strength that we draw from interaction and collaboration and other people. Resilience takes time to build up. So why would we think of that as an individual activity? But there's so much training now around making people sturdier and sterner. But then also then on the counter side, what I found is I do a lot of work in like the kindness space, and people are calling upon like softer skills. Yeah. So how can you be more empathetic? How can you be more compassionate? Those kind of things. So it's kind of trying to balance how resilience fits into those kind of softer approaches. And it completely works, and it's dependent on loads of different variables. But yeah, I think it's going to take us a while to kind of disseminate and reconstruct all of our kind of societal observations and stereotypes that we have in our own minds to kind of work through this. It's a really bizarre time.
I find it quite fascinating, exactly what you just said. I think what it's kind of highlighting is humans are complex.
Yeah,
and you can't just have one simplistic view. It can't be just positive thinking, we'll sort it out, or resilience workshop, we'll sort it out. You can't just have this, and sometimes it feels like that, like we just want a simple button to press and it's sorted. And actually it's so complex with all sorts of dynamics going on for people that I think that's what it's kind of lifted the lid on. But maybe we didn't want to know that. We wanted to know the simplicity.
Completely. We want an easy answer, don't we? We want a quick fix. We want to be able to just change it and feel better, or feel motivated, or change our circumstances really quickly. But like you said, we're so complex. So like, what works for me is not going to work for you. Yeah. I might impart some element of knowledge. I think that's the whole point about, they call it self-help, don't they? It's like, I've read copious amounts of like biographies and self-help and all of that. I'm doing an MSc as well on leadership. So I've read like maybe more than I should on this kind of stuff, but not all of it is relevant. Mm-hmm. Like I will literally take a tidbit from little pieces from here and there and then amalgamate it all into one place and think that's me. That's where I sit. And that's so subjective. That's all about me. It's not about anybody else. But that's my motivation. That's where I draw my positivity from, So I think it's about finding I call it in the book, like your moral compass, and building on that. And that builds up your resilience. That builds up your purpose and work ethic and all of those kind of things.
Yeah, that's a great thing to feel, because it's yours to build. You're right. You can't just, my book would have 5 steps, but, these 5 steps things aren't 5 steps to just work through and it'll all be fine. It just isn't like that. And as you say, you have to do a lot of work yourself, a lot of inner work. And I think books like yours really help people to be inspired to do the work. It's not that you're going to read the book and it's going to be solved. It's you're going to read the book and feel inspired to start this learning process or dive deeper into it.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing in the book, like the published Unbound, you're right, it's Unbound, they encouraged me to kind of build in some exercises. And I'm like, well, what's worked for you? Can you kind of write that down and share it? Which I have, but I'm fully aware that you won't have the time, or like be too tired, or be sitting on a train and you'll be like, well, I can't do that right now. But it's like whether you can like remember it. And I think it's like kind of like, it's a mindset, isn't it? It's trying to shift your brain into thinking, oh, I remember what she said about that. Shall I try it and see if there's anything I can get out of it? Is there any kind of, progress I can make by adopting some of these behaviors, or like just reading them, and maybe at some point you think, oh yeah, like you recall it, there's a trigger to it, there might be an interaction that you have that makes it relevant. So it's kind of for that purpose more than anything else. Like you say, we're not going to heal the world, but if you can just put in a little bit of positivity. I just wanted to help other people. I kind of felt, when you reach your lowest ebb, I don't want other people to feel like that. I want them to feel like there's an answer, like there's an option, like you have choices. You always have a choice. And it's just trying to support people to find the right one for them.
Are you looking for somebody to help you rethink your work? Are you looking for somebody who has got something to say, something different? Perhaps you're creating an event, you've got a conference coming up, and you're looking for speakers or workshops that really get people rethinking. Check out our platform with fresh new voices and people who've got something to say. Come and see us at recommended.anotherdoor.co.uk. I'm very curious, which couple of books maybe started your thinking?
At the moment, I'm reading Americana, which is a fascinating book on like race and social prejudices, and it's blurring my mind slightly. And I think that's it, because also I am privileged, and I need to recognize my privilege. But I say that in the sense that I grew up from like a lower class, socioeconomic diverse background. I'm from Devon originally, and now obviously I'm like a white presenting middle class woman. So I've been through like the social inequality journey myself, and I didn't recognize it until you reflect on things that are a little bit triggering for you. But obviously I can't even pretend to have any kind of concept of racism or what have you, but you try to be an ally, don't you? You try and understand it. And the most important part of that for me has been listening. And I had a really sad event in my working life at the BBC right at the start of the pandemic, when a direct report of mine took her own life. And I think from that moment, it obviously was like transformational, that whole moment. And ever since, it was like a few years ago, and there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about her. But I did mental health first aid training after that, which is why I thought, maybe she didn't before. But one of the most important things that I learned was open listening, non-judgmental listening, just letting someone have their piece and not trying to empathize, just being, because I think that's why I maybe got it wrong with her. Is I'd be like, oh yeah, that kind of happened to me. Don't worry about that. But that's just life. But I couldn't actually compare. There was no comparison. And I should have just sat there and like absorbed what she was telling me, because she just needed to kind of let it all out. But so I suppose, again, from a reading point of view, everything and anything, like I read like classic books. I think I reread The Handmaid's Tale the other day, and a little bit of self-help stuff. And then I'm a bit of like a politics nerd. So there was a book by Hillary Clinton and Madeleine Albright, like The Fresh Place in Hell for Women That Don't Help Other Women, or something like that.
And I like the fact that you've gone back to a book and you've now read it with different eyes. That's fascinating.
I think it's funny. You don't know if you did this when you were a kid, but like my mum, this is probably a really bad example. My mum let me watch Dirty Dancing when I was maybe like 8 or 9. And there's a part in there where she's had an abortion and it's all gone wrong. And when I was 8 or 9, I was like, there's something wrong with her neck. Like, she's like, why is she crying? I don't understand. Like, what's going on there? And my mum was like, yeah, it's her neck. It's her neck. And then obviously rewatched it many years later and found out what it was all about. So there's a reason why there's obviously certificates on these programs and films and what have you, and guidance. But also it's your level of understanding evolves, doesn't it? And like your exposure to different kind of things within your own life, your lived experience changes like all the time. So if you revisit something, I did it with The Lord of the Flies as well, actually. I read that at school when I was about 14. And I didn't sit with me in any way. I had no recollection of it at all, because obviously I'd been studying it academically. And I reread that in my 30s, and I'm like, blimey, this is a fantastic book, And again, because that life, all the stuff that had happened to me in that 15-year period of having read it had transformed how it like resonated with me. It was really like a unique. I love reading for that very reason. It just transforms your mindset and outlook. It's fantastic.
That just really sums up that we are so many different people, and as we said at the beginning about shifting and being open to not being that person that just says, well, this is just who I am and that's it. You can be like just that little example of, you can read a book at one point in your life and get something from it, and you can read it another point and get just even that sums it up.
Completely. Yeah, I think so. And I think I've personally wrestled with like a few demons and gremlins from when I was growing up, because I'm a type 1 diabetic as well. So, and I'm not excusing my behaviour because of this. When I was a teenager, I would push the limits just to test what my body was capable of. Like I can still be normal. I can still go out and get really drunk and be fine. And I couldn't. And I know that I upset a lot of people and my behaviour wasn't perfect. But there were lots of people that I've moved away from that behaviour and evolved. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but like that's not necessarily me anymore. And there's a lot of people that knew me back then, and you're out of touch, aren't you? But for some weird reason, we're all still in each other's lives through social media. So they still kind of touch in now and again. And it's not like they don't know me, because they do. And they were part of like a period of my life. But you move on, don't you? And you kind of evolve into who you're hoping to become. And it's not that you don't necessarily carry these people with you, but if they've fallen out of your life for whatever reason, I've struggled with that for sure, because there have been friendships that have just ended and I've been like, I'm not quite sure what happened there. And you just think, well, no, but just enjoy it for what it was. Enjoy the memories, enjoy everything that happened, and like move on, because life is so short that there's no point in like ruminating or dwelling on those past insecurities or those past actions that you didn't necessarily mean or what have you, and just trying to emerge through all of it as a better person. And also that's, again, down to your moral compass, like whatever sits right with you. I think we all know in our gut when we've made a decision that is comfortable and when we've made one that's not. And I think it's just kind of recognizing that, just using it to your own benefit and to like live your life in the way that you want to live it.
That's really interesting about tribe and people around you and moving on. It reminds me, I went to see Russell Brand last year when he went on tour?
Okay.
In Carlisle. I'm living in Cumbria at the moment. Fascinating. So
he's an interesting person.
half the audience were there to see old Russell Brand. Like half the audience was definitely there to see comedy, to see drunkenness, to see, like whatever they thought he was in the past. And the other half were the new audience of spirituality and all the rest of it. Fascinating, like exactly what you just described, like this kind of
duality.
Yeah, and it did make me think. I wrote a little bit about it, saying, how interesting when we do change and move. Some people come with us and get it. Some people don't. They want to hold us in that space of what they think we are. And other people didn't even know who you were, and they're just accepting you. So interesting about who's around you when you go through that change.
I couldn't agree more. And to be completely honest, it's one of the things that I've struggled with most in my life, because I'm like, well, I cared about you, and now now it's just cold. Now it's just stopped. And like you feel like you're just naturally, organically progressing, right? You feel like you're doing what's right for you. And yet it doesn't sit right with people that could have been like a really intrinsic part of your life that you even saw on like a daily basis. And all of a sudden, because you've decided just to do what's right for you and not even made like a seismic decision, you're just moving forwards for whatever reason. Maybe this is quite extreme. I've had this happen to me. People have just like completely ghosted me or completely cut me off. And it hurts beyond measure. But also, I think as I've gotten older, it's not as bad, because I don't have the bandwidth and the capacity, because life is like the stage of life I'm at. Everything's quite busy. Everything's quite demanding on my time. I don't have enough time to think about it. But when I do, it still hurts, clearly. But yeah, it's trying to deal with that, isn't it? Which is not easy. But like, again, I'm okay with who I am. So therefore, do I need them? That's quite hard in itself, isn't it? Like, what am I missing? What am I yearning for? What do I need that still? It's like cutting out the toxicity to a point, isn't it? And just trying to move forward from it.
Yeah, I think people do go through that a lot. I think you're right. And when you change, you can trigger so much in other people.
Yeah, completely.
It's not always about
them.
Yeah, it could be more about how they're feeling.
Yeah.
Or if they feel like you've done you're betraying them by this change. I've met people who have changed career and things, and people have felt really let down.
Yeah.
They've changed career.
It's so bizarre, isn't it? Because but you say, I would imagine like 9 times out of 10, if not 10 times out of 10, it's their insecurities that they're manifesting onto you and your friendship or your relationship or whatever kind of, contact you have with them. And you're almost having to deal with their problems which is, it's really challenging. Like I say, probably one of the hardest things I've found in life.
But yes, so what made you sit down and write the book? Because that always fascinates me, the moment that someone actually decides to take action, because we all have books in us, you know, I've written a few myself, but that moment you've actually sat down and you've done it. What happened there? What made you do it?
I think it was because I just had this urge, and it sounds really silly, and I knew it was going to be a humongous effort. And I think the whole point of writing is like, you don't just sit down in one sitting and write a book. You have to kind of commit that that's what you're going to do. And I think there was a time frame, and I thought I can factor this in. And I think it's like any commitment or any bigger commitment that I have in my life. I'd be like, I can factor this in and I can commit myself to it, and I can try and be quite disciplined. I say quite disciplined, not entirely disciplined, about like doing it every day for a little bit. Not even every day. I suppose I just knew
in your head, you thought that's what.
Yeah, I think I could come up with a plan, and also I suppose there was a level of accountability.
Yeah,
I was like, I give myself, and this works with my MSc as well. I give myself like targets, like by the end of next week, I want to have written 1,000 words. You know, and it can just be like word vomit. You know, like just I don't want to get it out. I want to have written down 1,000 words, because clearly you have to re-edit and go back over, and you might change your mind about what you want to say and what have you. So I was working to those kind of incremental deadlines, but factoring in the overall time frame to actually do it. And I think I just got to a point where I wanted to try and do that. And yeah, I suppose that's what I did. And then obviously, like I say, I spoke to the publishers a bit, and I gave them the drafts that I had, and they recommended trying to work in the exercises. And I also do a podcast with the Women of the Future Network, and been fortunate enough to speak to people like Cherie Blair and Nimco Ali, so activists and politicians and broadcasters and people from all different walks of life, like science and entrepreneurs and sport and what have you. And they agreed to let me include some of the quotes from that podcast, because there's some stuff they said was really inspirational, and it kind of fit into like the categories or the chapters that I was writing, and it was the useful point of like moving something on. And also, again, like you say, just having that correlation, you hope, with like anyone reading it to make you feel that you're not alone. And you know, if this person of this stature can feel the same way, then clearly we are all human. So, so it's a ton of factor in all of those kind of different facets of it and committing to doing it. And I mean, I still need to, it's on 75% with Unbound, which means with Unbound, you pledge for the book. So it's got another 25% to go, but it's very nearly there. And I'm confident that it will be by the end of the year. And yeah, then hopefully it can come out next year and everyone can have a copy and read it and enjoy it and hopefully benefit from it. I'm a bit nervous about the feedback. I'm sure people will think it's a load of tosh. But some people will hopefully benefit from what's in there. So,
absolutely.
My family, I'm sure like all families, are a little bit weird and wonderful. And I've felt that they've given me, I'm sure I've heard other people say this to me as well, that sometimes something their family will say will hold them back. Yeah. They'll be like, oh, crap, no, I shouldn't talk about that. That's a bit too sensitive. But it's your story, you know, it's authentic because it's your words, it's your recollection, it's your memory. I remember I wrote a book before this, like a draft, and it was fictional and I changed names and stuff. And I gave it to my sister, and then her and mine relationship is a bit up and down. But I love her. I just don't think we have the most functional relationship at times. But so I gave her the draft, and she hated it with a passion, absolutely hated it. And the vitriol that I got from her stopped me writing anything for 5 years. I didn't write anything for 5 years. And I'm literally like, that's what she did to me. That's what her opinion did to me. And I was like, how is that healthy? How is that useful? Why have I censored myself because of what she thinks? And again, this is my story. It's not yours. And I think maybe there's an element, again, of resilience in that, and courage. But it shouldn't stop you. I really regret that. It stopped me from writing anything. And I'm a journalist. And this is like, you know, and a storyteller. And how can I not write anything?
Frozen.
And one thought. It just, I was a bit disappointed in myself. But I think also it was like a a phase. Like I say, everything waxes and wanes and changes, and everything's in flux. So I'm through that, and I'm grateful, and I will never let that happen to me again.
Yeah, you check it. But that's that work that we were talking about. You know, when you realise that she didn't do that to you, you did it to yourself.
Completely.
Which is a horrible thing. I hate that, because it's like, well, I want to blame someone else.
Pinning it on her. But no, she didn't tell me to stop writing. I just decided that I didn't want to offend anybody. And now I'm just like...
offending everyone.
Be offended. I'll be offended.
That is it. It's getting over it. And you do have a moment, definitely, when you do that work, that you just go, oh, do you know what? I'm going to do it despite it. And I'm going to enjoy it. And it's going to be all about me. It's going to be for me. And this is the space that I'm in. But you're right. It's the work. And so many people be listening to this and have had a little thing said in their ear. Yeah, and it cut you off. Yeah. Sometimes it's even when you're little, you know, you've had something like, you know, getting told not to be so big-headed, or, you know, it's not all about you, or small little things that have kind of crept into your thinking.
Someone's told me the other day, I don't actually know where I heard this, but she stopped writing. We were having a very similar conversation to this one. I was like, where does that come from? And she was like, well, I think it's because when I was growing up, my mum said, oh, your brother's the creative one. And it was literally that comment. She's now like nearly 40, or in the mid-40s. From the age of 6 to 40. Words are powerful.
Yeah. They sort of hover around. Is it the shadow? They call it the shadow, or something's here that just hovers about us. But if we can grab hold of it and just say hello, it's not going to go away, apparently. But, you know, hi, you're there, but I'm going to do it anyway. Oh, thank you so much for sharing and coming on and being so transparent in the whole process of this, because that is what this is all about. It's not easy, this stuff, but it's so rewarding, and it's possible if we step into this space and just give things a go. So thank you so much, Kim. Where can people find you? Obviously, Unbound, we will put the link in the show notes
thank you
for your book. I have already purchased, so looking forward to hitting that 100%. I'm an Unbound addict. I love it. It's brilliant. You get so many really interesting ideas that you probably wouldn't find on a normal bookshelf. So
you're completely right. I suppose, like you say, I'm on Unbound, so search for Kim Rowell or You're So Much More Than Your Job on Unbound. And on Instagram and Twitter, I'm at Kim Rowell TV, and Rowell is ROWELL, like Simon Cowell, but with an R. A little bit of me dies when I have to say that. But
I was going to say, do you have to introduce yourself like that forever?
Yes, you do. It's checking into a hotel, and it's obvious. Like, most people know how to spell Rowell, but they still ask you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Kim. Well, we will make sure we get all of the right links, and then we just press a button. That's the easiest way to do it. Well, best of luck with the book. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Are you looking for somebody to help you rethink your work? Are you looking for somebody who has got something to say, something different? Perhaps you're creating an event, you've got a conference coming up, and you're looking for speakers or workshops that really get people rethinking. Check out our platform with fresh new voices and people who've got something to say. Come and see us at recommended.anotherdoor.co.uk. Love this podcast? Give us a 5-star review or rate us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts.